Thank you. Hi, everyone. I guess our panel is somewhat related to the earlier one, but we are investors focused today. So we're going to talk about sustainable tech. I think I'm not going to introduce everyone again because our lovely hostess here has already introduced everyone. Let's start with our first question, shall we? We all know sustainable investment, sustainable technology covers technology that makes an impact socially, environmentally, or economically. But as investment experts as yourself, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the actual scope of sustainable technology.
Or maybe I can start first. Thanks, Penny. I'm Joseph from Fair. So to the extent of this panel, I think that for sustainable technology, it means that technology enable the support of the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. So we actually invest in healthcare, education, financial technology, and also solutions to climate change, which actually align with the UN SDG 3, 4, 9, and 13, which means wealth and health. Well-being and health, educations, quality educations, and industry innovation and infrastructure, and also climate action as well. So we believe by investing that we can actually improve the world to a better pace. And this is what I think about the SusTech is like.
Well, I always have a question about the phrase SusTech. I mean, what are we sustaining back to? I also like the word impact investing. I use that word a lot when I describe my work. At District Capital, what we do seek to support is the sustainability of our human species on this planet. And that within that, we look for technological solutions, and that's where the tech side comes in, within public health, food security, and also climate action. So that's how we define it, and we do it across a multi-asset strategy.
Francesco?
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm Francesco. I work for a Sustainable Finance Initiative here in Hong Kong. And we're basically a network of family offices and private investors based in mainly in Hong Kong, but also in Singapore. And I would say, so basically we look at a variety of themes depending on what our members are interested in. And I would say for us, sustainable tech. So we need not forget that there is already technologies available that can be further scaled and assessed and used. But at the same time, in terms of sustainable technology, we think of anything that is innovative and scalable through a technological aspect, for example, and usually related to either increasing efficiency or reducing waste or enhancing traceability, for example. So I would say these are the way we look at sustainable tech. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll direct this question to you first, Francesco. So through your sustainable tech investments, are there any interesting experience you can share with the audience?
Sure. So we look at a variety of solutions across asset classes. So we look at venture capital solutions, private equity solutions, and direct investments as well into ventures. And I think we see a lot of interesting solutions in, for example, advanced building materials or food and agriculture or healthcare. These are, I would say, the main, most interesting ones. For example, I can share on advanced building materials. There is like a vast need for decarbonization of real estate, for example. So there is companies that nowadays can leverage data to basically pull information on certain buildings and tell you how a certain building can be decarbonized to reach net zero. So these are the type of solutions that we're looking into for our members.
Michael?
Well, we always talk about the carbon issue. I think that methane as a super pollutant is something that's often overlooked. And close to 40% of human-created methane emissions actually come from livestock, for dairy, for meats. And some of the technology that we work with help livestock. They use natural ingredients in the feed to lower their methane emissions up to 95%. And I find it really interesting because it's hard to change consumer behavior. We can't all of a sudden have everyone go back to plant-based meat or a vegetarian diet, but how can we change our existing to make it more sustainable?
Okay. Yeah, I think Michael and Francesco share a very interesting story. And to me, I think for impact investment, usually we look at the end product and services that the company can produce. For instance, maybe you can talk about investing in an EV company, investing in a data solution company that can help to reduce the carbon emission rate. It's kind of like straightforward. But I would like to share a story that one of our underlying investment fund invested company. And that company produced a material that tried to replace styrofoam, which is a material which is rarely used in packaging material or even in a lunchbox, especially when you eat char siu fan. Okay, well, you always eat that. It's very straightforward. The product is very easy to understand, and then it's very environmental friendly. Because when you use a styrofoam and you throw away, then it cannot be biodegradable, and so it's not really good to the environment. And when we try to assess the company and try to build an impact matrix with the company, we found that the company actually had a second chance program. I'm not sure you have heard about it, but looking at the process of a second chance program, it means that it hired people from the prison, and then the people can make a living by joining the company, because it's very hard for those people to join back the society. So after we know that they have such a program, we try to have the impact metrics of how many % of the people are joining the second chance program and their graduation rate, which means that they never go back to jail again. So the program is highly successful, and it gives me a reminder that if we can actually understand the process of the company, we can also find some interesting, also meaningful element in the company, other than just the end product and services that we're looking for.
Oh, if I can finally have my barbecue pork rice with a piece of mind soon. I look forward to that. Well, I mean, you guys all talked about some of the investments that you guys have been looking at, but what do you think from a macro perspective, what investors are going to looking at when they invest in sustainable tech in the near future, and whether, the current environment with the inflation and the war is going to impact that decision? Francesco?
Yeah, sure. So I think we tend to look at the macro drivers first to kind of like map out the themes that we want to look at. So for example, as I mentioned before, we look at food and agriculture because 70% of fresh water goes into agriculture. So that's a very meaningful theme to look at. And in terms of like solutions within this topic, there is a lot of different solutions. Like for example, precision fermentation. It's a new, not a new technology. It's actually a technology that has been around for decades, but that has found new applications in the space. Or cell-based meat. That is, it has hurdles in terms of costs and regulations, but they say by 2025 it's going to become commercially viable, which is great. And in terms of other topics, as I mentioned before, the decarbonization of the built environment, 40% of CO2 emissions come from real estate. So that's why we look at solutions within the space. And we think above all in Asia, in cities like Hong Kong and Singapore that are heavily populated and built, this is definitely a topic that we need to look at. And another one that is more and more important, I think, it's healthcare, as we have seen over the past 3 years or so. I think, in terms of the underserved population, there is around 4 billion people that don't have proper access to healthcare. And we have aging population as well, which has different problems in terms of like different healthcare needs. And also we have a growing middle class in emerging economies that are going to look for new solutions and can afford more. So I think these are different spaces that are very important for investors to look at, and very resilient in situations where other sectors are quite difficult to invest into.
Yeah, I totally agree with Francesco. I think sustainable food, healthcare, and also solutions to the climate change are very essential in terms of the impact investment society. At Fair in the company, we also actively track the space technology. So space technology, I think most of you may heard of Elon Musk, and they want to send people to the Mars. Okay, but it is actually more than that. In United Nations, there's an actual program called Space for SDG. It means that the space technology can actually help to support the SDG goals as well. I can give you one of the example of underlying fund investment, which utilize the SAS data, which is the spectral aperture radar data, which means they use the images from the lower orbit satellites to help the insurance company to analyze the impact of the disaster to the farm. So if the farm are damaged, the crops are damaged, then the solution can help to analyze how much damage they have and how much combination they have to do. Compared with the old solutions, which may take them months for them to finish the calculations, it only may take a few days. So the farmers can resume their work much faster, or not. They have to wait until the insurance adjuster, to calculate all the things, to take pictures, and it may take months and then remain unproductive. So I think it's also one of the hot space that we are looking into, and we are now doing a lot of research and study on this space.
I think that when our firm looks, because we're a family office, and by design we need to look, not 5 years, but like 10 years, 15 years, maybe longer than a general venture capital timeline. We think about what's the next mega trend. We've had a lot of success with carbon credits and buying up futures and holding them to maturity, and that especially with the energy crisis and the overall net zero commitments of global governments, we've had a lot of success in those markets. But what would the market ask for after that? Are they going to ask for other kinds of credits from these real nature capital? Are they going to ask for that? And so we're investing in companies which help track other forms of credit, water, soil, biodiversity credits, in anticipation of this trend happening.
Thank you. Well, we talked a lot about the underlying investment. How about we talk about how you decide? Well, you guys have also talked about how you decide to invest in it, but what are there any other considerations that is very unique to sustainable technology investment, like legal, operational? And do you usually go direct investment, or you do it through a fund? Maybe you can share some of your experience.
Should I go first?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So we're not investing ourselves. So we select investments for our members, for our family offices. So we don't invest directly, but I would say in terms of asset classes, our members tend to look mostly at, as I mentioned before, at venture capital, direct investments, or private equity investments as well. So these are the main, let's say, asset classes that they look at. And I think in terms of impact, so it depends on themes, geographies, asset classes, the way you look at things. So it really depends on a case-by-case basis, I think. But usually the process that what we look at is the usual big words in impact, like intentionality and additionality. So we look at whether what is the actual intention in terms of impact that a manager or a company has, and then what's the additionality of investing. So if the investor decides to invest, one of our members, for example, does their investment make a difference? Or would the positive impact be achieved anyways without their investment? So that's something that we think about and look at in terms of the solution that we select. And in terms of like direct investments, I think something that is very important is also the DNA of the entrepreneurs. I know that it sounds a bit trivial maybe, but you need to look at also what's the reason behind basically starting a venture. So I would say these are the probably main elements that we look at that are not common to traditional investments, I think.
Maybe Joseph, you can go next.
Yeah, I agree with Francesco that the impact reporting is very important. In the past example, we have a flagship fund-of-fund investment investing in the impact funds. What we did is to agree with the managers, the fund managers that we were invested in, on the reporting standards that we required. Some of them, including what is the impact matrix we agree upon, before we make the investment. Usually in terms, we will sign a side letter because they do not provide all the impact report to all the investors. So we sign a side letter with the fund managers. And we also be creative of what we can do in order to do the impact investment. For one of the example, we agree with the fund manager, if they do not follow the impact reporting or they do not follow the ESG standard, we can actually reduce a commitment. So we can actually we just leave the investment if they do not follow it. And one of the example of underlying funding is that they will try to agree with the invested company before they make the investment by if they do not follow the ESG standard or they cannot finish the compliance with the IFC performance standards, then the IR requirement upon exit will increase from like 15% to 20%. So it's kind of punishment if they cannot meet certain criteria. This is kind of like operation maybe very specific to impact only.
I think that Joseph and Francesco really covered the gamut of what impact investors consider. There's another element that I think we can touch upon, which is impact risk. What happens if this entrepreneur or this company either deviates from their mission or just something else happens and it hits the negative impact side of things. For example, there's a company that we're very close to investing in. We didn't go through at the end because there were some considerations. And what happened was this company is a agricultural tech company, and they help farmers use natural farming techniques with monitoring to remove a lot of chemicals from their large plots of farms. It was ultimately privately transacted, sold to a huge chemicals conglomerate with the intention to just shelve it and not let us see the day of light. And that came down to the entrepreneur being slightly greedy and wanting that exit for him, his stakeholders. So that's an impact risk that we also have to consider.
Right. That's certainly very insightful for managers who are looking into the space. We are doing quite well in time, so I'm going to ask this question about the private and the public sector, which kind of follow up on what the earlier panel was talking about. So for those of you who have listened to the latest CE policy, they just mentioned that they're going to implement a new green tech fund, which worth Hong Kong dollars 400 million, to support the research and development of decarbonization technology that has a commercial value. Now, this is what the public sector is offering to do in Hong Kong at the moment. So you guys as private investors, how do you think the private investors can get involved in this space? Michael?
I don't have the exact details of that fund. We haven't analyzed it yet. I think there's a couple considerations. As a private investor, we generally, of course, like to work with the governments and help them take on other parts of that risk spectrum. If they could de-risk it to a certain part, we can bring in more private capital to support. I think, just to carry another thought from the previous panel, if the government not only can provide the capital for an impact operation to happen in Hong Kong and to run in Hong Kong, they could actually help be the client as well. That would be a tremendous help, and we would definitely see a much more energetic market for impact here.
Maybe so I echo what Michael said. I think so. I'm also not like super familiar with this, but I think in general we think this fund. We would like it to be more geared towards sustainability as well. So that's what we actually discussed with some of our members and other groups in Hong Kong. That being said, I think above all in a place like Hong Kong that is very top-down driven in terms of whatever comes to sustainability, it's usually like it needs to start with policy and then it trickles down to everybody. I think having a government involved, it always helps. It's a bit like a blended finance concept, as Michael mentioned, that it kind of like de-risks a little bit the investments, and then private capital feels more more comfortable to come in as well. So yeah, I would agree with Michael with what he said, and yeah, probably a bit more geared towards sustainability.
Yeah, I agree with two panels here. I agree with Francesco and Michael. Personally, I think for the fund to be useful, it must be easy to apply, and the grant time should be short. Usually in Hong Kong, I'm not sure the cases, because some of the company told me that it's very difficult to apply the funds in Hong Kong, and it takes a very long approval time and a lot of documentations. So I think if we are a private investor, we have to calculate how much the company need for the one way. If you rely on such kind of fund, it has to be reliable. If it is not really able to get the fund in certain period of time, it's kind of difficult for the investor to do so. So I urge if the government can actually, if they put out any kind of scheme, they can actually try to think of a way to get the approval faster and easier. And this is what I think the private investor want to do, because in overseas it's very easy. If you achieve certain kind of achievement, then you get the grant easily. They just give you the money. But in Hong Kong, you get a long approval process. But with all my due respect, I think it's a very good intention for the Hong Kong government to provide such kind of incentive to the companies and actually help the R&D development in Hong Kong, especially for the universities for this fund.
I just want to add to Joseph's point. I think that there's also merit to thinking that there could be a matching fund for private investors, because private investors tend to be much more experienced or understand the risk metrics of a startup. So if the private investor is already devoted to it, maybe if there's a one-to-one matching fund from the government, would be extremely helpful to encourage new entrepreneurs to enter the market.
All right, maybe I should send an email to SCMP and post all these feedback up. Well, okay, so as a final question, all four of us sitting here do think that capital should matter and impact investment do matter. So if you are to advocate to our audience that they should start, or if they have not, look at sustainable investment, what would you tell them in 1 or 2 minutes?
I can start. I generally try to talk to a lot of next generation asset owners, other family offices with kind of in the transition of wealth transfer, and I say, do what you understand, like the asset classes. You don't have to jump to another asset class. Impact is just a lens. It's not a new asset class. So do what you do best, but then also consider, is this values aligned with your own values and your family values? That's what I would say.
Francesco?
Yeah. I totally echo what he said. I think it all starts with the values. So you need to identify what you care for, what you care about, and take it from there. I think something that we saw from our circle recently in these difficult markets is that people have shifted towards different asset classes to find solutions to stay within impact investing, and they haven't tried to look for solutions outside of impact investing. So I think if you take a longer term view, there is options to do impact investing even in difficult markets.
I think I agree with Francesco and Michael, and it gets back to the values and the basics of the sustainability in mind. So very long time ago, 30, 40 years ago, utilization defines sustainability is the meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So we enjoy today without compromising the future generation's needs. So I think keeping in mind this one for investing is very important.
Oh, okay, thank you everyone, and hope you enjoy our panel. Thank you.